police officer threatened to kill his wife if he didn't reveal the hiding place of the fugitives. Since he firmly remained silent, the officer ruthlessly murdered his wife. The film opens in a city under strict military control. A terrifying disaster strikes as a deadly virus spreads, turning the residents into panicked survivors. Facing imminent danger, most of the population is forced to flee, seeking refuge in another city in hopes of survival. However, their attempt to leave the city is quickly halted when the military enforces a lockdown, forcing the residents to stay. Anyone who opposes this decision is arrested and sent to an isolation camp. The next scene introduces Stone, a ruthless commander torturing Susan, the wife of John, a soldier who betrayed orders. John had secretly helped residents escape from the isolation camp, and when Stone discovered this, he took immediate action. He threatened to kill Susan if John didn't reveal the hiding place of the fugitives. Because John remained steadfast in his silence, Stone mercilessly executed Susan right before his eyes. 3 years have passed, but the pain of losing his wife still haunts John. Hiding in the shadows, he has secretly honed his combat skills, fueled by an unrelenting thirst for vengeance, waiting for the day to strike back. It is said that in the past, John was a member of the Special Forces under Stone's command. This unit was responsible for a horrific massacre, slaughtering hundreds of residents simply because they were suspected of being infected with the deadly virus. In reality, the virus was merely a pretext fabricated by Stone to conceal his sinister schemes for personal gain. Innocent civilians became victims of his greed and ruthlessness. John, unable to turn a blind eye to such atrocities, boldly condemned his superior's brutal actions. However, instead of being heard, he was branded a traitor. When doctors conducted tests, they discovered that John was immune to the deadly virus. Realizing the potential to save the city, the medical team immediately devised a plan to create a vaccine from his blood. However, John firmly refused to become a test subject and fought back fiercely. After an intense battle, he managed to escape from the detention camp and disappeared into the dense forest. Amid the darkness of the desolate wilderness, the haunting memory of his wife's tragic death continued to torment him. The pain of loss intertwined with the guilt of having once stained his hands with the blood of innocent civilians. An overwhelming terror came over him when he realized he could take no more, and that as soon as he did so, the pain of the crash would begin all over again. As he was drowning in sorrow and regret, John suddenly froze in shock. Before him lay an injured woman, motionless on the ground. John immediately carried the woman back to his cabin, trying to stop the bleeding and tend to her wounds. The next morning, she regained consciousness and introduced herself as Maria. While examining her injury, John discovered that a bullet was still lodged in her body, a remnant from the chase when she attempted to escape from the military. With precision and skill, John carefully extracted the bullet. However, upon closer inspection, he froze in shock. This was no ordinary bullet. It was a sophisticated tracking device. Maria passed out the moment John removed the bullet from her body. While tending to her wound, he noticed a strange barcode on her wrist, a clear sign that she was being hunted by the Special Forces. When Maria finally regained consciousness, John spoke in a firm tone. "You can stay here to rest, but only for a short time. Once you recover, you need to leave immediately." John wanted no part in any trouble. After all, he himself was already a target of the Special Forces. 2 days later, a Special Forces team tracked the GPS signal to John's cabin. They demanded that he reveal Maria's whereabouts, but John remained cold and unresponsive. When they lost patience and prepared to search the cabin, he struck without warning, taking them down in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Maria launched a surprise attack of her own, swiftly eliminating one of them. Watching John fight, Maria was stunned. She began to realize that he was no ordinary man. Maria was curious to learn more about John, but he remained reserved, refusing to reveal anything about himself. Meanwhile, news of the Special Forces members' deaths quickly reached their two superiors, Roy and Lucy. Realizing the gravity of the situation, they decided to report immediately to their commander, Stone, the ruthless man who had murdered John's wife at the beginning of the film. Meanwhile, John poured all his energy into fortifying their hideout, turning it into an impenetrable stronghold. He knew the Special Forces wouldn't let this slide. They would undoubtedly return for revenge. Late at night, as the two sat by the fire, Maria finally opened up. She told John the reason she was being hunted. Like him, she carried DNA that was immune to the deadly virus. Because of this, the Special Forces wanted to capture her for their own sinister purposes. Maria refused to provide her DNA because she fully understood the military's true intentions. They had no plans to save everyone. The vaccine would only be reserved for those in power, while the poor citizens infected with the virus would be left to die. This wasn't a humanitarian mission, it was a tool to strengthen their control over the city. Fate had led her to John, another rare individual with natural immunity, but there was one painful difference between them. John had been forced to watch his beloved wife be slaughtered right before his eyes. Maria revealed that she had once been a thief and was imprisoned. However, when the virus outbreak occurred, it claimed the lives of most prisoners and guards in the facility. She was the only one who survived, not by luck, but because of her rare immunity. The next morning, John began training Maria in weapon handling for self-defense. He knew the battle was approaching, and she needed to be able to protect herself. Not long after, the shadows of 3 Special Forces operatives emerged from the depths of the forest, moving toward their hideout. John quickly noticed the enemy approaching. Without hesitation, he devised a plan, deliberately stepping into the hut to lure them into his trap. As they drew near, he fired swiftly, taking down 2 of them in an instant. However, Maria was unfortunate. One of the remaining soldiers spotted her. He grabbed her, using her as a hostage, and ordered John to come out of hiding. Seizing the advantage of the darkness inside the hut, John took precise aim and shot the soldier from within. As he stepped outside, he wasted no time and finished him off with a final shot. When the 3 missing soldiers failed to return, their superiors immediately dispatched another team to hunt down Maria. However, they were still uncertain whether her protector was truly John, a former Special Forces member once regarded as a seasoned and dangerous warrior. Meanwhile, John and Maria were fully prepared. They knew the chase was far from over, and the next attack was only a matter of time. John retrieved a weapon he hadn't touched in years. Feeling its familiar weight in his hands, he knew the real battle was about to begin. Before making final preparations, he asked Maria to fetch water from a nearby lake. However, as soon as she arrived, she was ambushed. New Special Forces members had surrounded her from all directions. Believing they had captured their most valuable target, Roy immediately attempted to report to Stone. But before he could even make the call, John emerged from the shadows, firing precise shots at each enemy. Once again, he managed to rescue Maria just in time. Unfortunately, Roy survived. He immediately reported everything to Stone and requested reinforcements. Realizing that Maria was a high-priority target, Stone ordered his men to capture her alive at all costs. Not long after, a newly dispatched unit arrived. Maria was captured, but she refused to go down without a fight. Seizing the opportunity, she launched a counterattack and systematically took down the entire Special Forces squad. When news of the disastrous failure reached Stone, he flew into a rage. This time, he deployed an even larger force with a clear directive: eliminate the one who helped Maria escape. Before long, the new wave of soldiers arrived at John's cabin, ready for a fight to the death. Gunfire erupted violently as fierce clashes broke out once again, but this time John was fully prepared. Not only did he have a clear strategy, but he also took full advantage of the familiar terrain to set deadly traps for his enemies. In contrast, the Special Forces operatives struggled in the unfamiliar environment, desperately trying to reach their target. Every step they took led them straight into John's carefully laid traps. In the end, just as expected, they met the same fate as their fallen comrades before them. Eliminated one by one with ruthless precision, dozens of reinforcements arrived, determined to eliminate their target. While searching the area, they unexpectedly discovered a hidden tunnel near John's cabin and immediately reported it to Lucy. But before they could act, Maria, already lying in wait, struck with lightning speed, taking them down one by one. When the gunfire finally ceased, not a single soldier was left alive. News of the crushing defeat quickly reached Stone. Realizing that his previous tactics were no longer effective, he decided to change his approach. This time, he would use the tunnel as bait, luring John into a deadly trap of his own design. While surveying the forest, John unexpectedly came face to face with Roy, an old friend who had now become his enemy. Without warning, the two clashed in a fierce battle. Roy was not an easy opponent to take down. He launched relentless attacks, forcing John to retreat again and again. John fell multiple times, each time seeming as if he wouldn't be able to get back up. At the same time, Maria was captured by the enemy, but John refused to fall. Despite his exhaustion, he gritted his teeth and pushed himself to his feet. He knew he couldn't lose Maria. No matter what, He had to find her. Meanwhile, Roy escorted Maria to the tunnel, where the soldiers had gathered, awaiting orders. John happened to overhear Stone's instructions through a communication device of a soldier he had taken down. Realizing that the enemy was converging in the tunnel, he immediately rushed there. However, John had no idea that it was a trap set by Stone. Upon entering the tunnel, he quickly encountered Roy once again. With no other choice, the two of them charged into a life-or-death battle. Meanwhile, Stone and his army had set up an ambush at the end of the tunnel, waiting for Roy to bring Maria. Back in the battle, John was gradually losing ground against Roy's experienced attacks. But he held his ground, waiting for the right moment to strike back. Finally, the decisive moment arrived, and John turned the tide, taking down Roy. Without hesitation, he immediately rescued Maria and led her out of the tunnel. However, just as they reached the exit, they ran into a squad of soldiers who had set up a trap, blocking their way out. Another confrontation was about to begin. With no other choice, John and Maria had no option but to charge into the battle. Using their superior combat skills, they quickly took down the Special Forces team. But just when they thought they were safe, a reinforcement squad arrived, surrounding all possible exits. John pulled the pin on a smoke grenade and threw it right into the middle of the enemy, creating a thick fog that obscured their vision. Taking advantage of the chaos, he pulled Maria and dashed toward the exit. However, at that moment, a bullet from Lucy's gun flew straight into John. He hesitated, but with sheer willpower he continued running. John and Maria quickly entered a nearby room. He told her to stay there and not go outside until everything was safe. He would draw the enemy away. Without hesitation, he left, determined to lead the enemy out of the tunnel. As soon as he stepped out, John realized he had walked into a trap. At the end of the tunnel, Stone and his squad were already waiting for him. With no way out, John was forced to drop his weapon and face the enemy who had taken the life of his wife. At this moment, Stone also realized the reason why Maria had been so difficult to capture. Because John had been protecting her. He approached John and asked where Maria was. John remained silent despite his body being covered in wounds from the brutal torture. Unable to make John reveal Maria's location, John challenged Stone to a one-on-one fight. Stone, feeling challenged, gladly accepted. In the end, John defeated Stone right before his soldiers' eyes. The entire battlefield fell silent, with only the heavy breaths of the defeated man breaking the stillness. Stone, unwilling to accept defeat, tried to get up and ordered his soldiers to hand him a weapon. But his soldiers just stood there, their eyes cold and unyielding. After years of enduring his brutality, they no longer wanted to obey. Enraged, Stone charged forward, snatching a gun from one of his men, but as soon as he pulled the trigger, the bullet from the barrel pierced his own body, a trap that had been set. At that moment, Maria stepped out of the shadows, holding 2 grenades in her hands, threatening to blow herself up if Lucy didn't release John. Lucy reluctantly agreed to Maria's demand. Maria was escorted back to headquarters while John was left alone in the desolate forest. However, no one knew that before this, John had secretly given Maria a sample of his blood, hoping that it could eventually be used to create a vaccine so it wouldn't fall into the hands of the ruthless authorities. In the end, the vaccine created from John and Maria's blood samples helped the people regain a peaceful life in the city. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like to show your support. It's best to watch the entire movie so you don't miss any exciting details. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next interesting videos.